Evil attempting to influence the narrative discourse of the Western world is the topic of today's video. I'm your host, B.A. Jarvis, and you are watching The Golden Door. So it's been a few days since I posted my last video, but I appreciate everyone who's been watching so far, especially if you've hit the like and subscribe button, because that's been very encouraging. I was planning on posting a few things last week, but I woke up Friday morning, like many of you, to learn about the absolutely horrific terrorist incident in New Zealand perpetrated against the country's Muslim community within their places of worship. To add heinous insult to heinous injury, this person, and I will not be naming them, posted a 70-plus page document attempting to explain his reasoning and justification for the attack, and then proceeded to live stream the event on social media, ensuring the incident would become part of the larger conversation about what role the internet and social media play in the radicalization of individuals, as well as what types of materials and opinions should be permitted as part of the public discourse. In the immediate aftermath of this attack, there is a strong desire by many to remove all copies and references of the killer's manifesto online, not wanting to give any space at all to his racist and xenophobic viewpoints, and I definitely understand this instinct, especially given the fact that early reports were indicating that the manifesto's clear intent was to weaponize opposing ideological viewpoints and spark further violence. However, here's why I think this instinct is wrong. The man who committed this atrocity is evil. I'm not saying he was born evil, but his actions have placed him irrevocably in this category going forward. I know this is going to be a contentious issue for some. There are some people who do not believe in evil and believe that all malicious actions of individuals can be explained away by either terrible socialization or some kind of medical explanation regarding their brain structure or chemistry, and this can definitely be applied to some actions in this category. The killer's own words tell us that this is not the case with what happened in Christchurch, and I believe his manifesto makes it clear that he chose evil. This is a person who does not see human beings as individuals. This person only sees people as representatives of their racial group and ascribes to the most basic and violent version of tribalism, which sees only members of your own group as human and everyone as something else, something non-human. This is the nature of evil, to dehumanize, and this person embraced evil to the fullest extent. Those he sees as his enemies he compares to insects and animals, which is language you see whenever genocidal instincts in humans rears its ugly head. But why is this important for the public to know and to understand? There are people who want to see the world burn. And while they often espouse that from the ashes a better world order will emerge, their resentment has driven them to the point that only the first part is necessary, as long as the world burns. Again, this is a person whose stated intent is to use the current dangerous levels of political polarization within the United States and elsewhere to further divide society in the hopes of turning heated discourse on culture into a violent culture war. Do not assist him in this endeavor. There are no winners when this kind of discourse takes hold of the narrative. I have a major issue with journalists and other members of the media making reference to specific passages of the manifesto that fit the narrative that they want to promote while ignoring everything else that might detract and censoring the document from the public eye. Now, I want to mention three people whose names have unfortunately become associated with the narrative surrounding this horrific event and whom I believe are being unfortunately used by both the killer and members of the media to skew the narrative. They are Felix Kellenberg, Candace Owens, and Donald Trump. Felix, better known as PewDiePie, was until very recently the most popular YouTube personality in the world with over 90 million subscribers. Unfortunately for Felix, one of the killer's last utterances before he went on his murderous rampage was, "Remember lads, subscribe to PewDiePie," which was then used a few days ago as the title of an article with the subtitle, "We need to talk about how domestic terrorists are created online." This is a reprehensible article on a number of levels, but its central thesis is to quote, "Personalities like PewDiePie are crucial in this incremental and insidious whitewashing and normalization of what the world would otherwise recognize as dangerous behavior." We'll come back to that. Candace Owens is the Director of Communications for conservative group Turning Point USA and is probably best known for recently launching the Blexit movement, which is a campaign to encourage African Americans to abandon the Democratic Party and register as Republicans. Candace is mentioned in the killer's manifesto briefly in the answer to the question of who radicalized him the most, which on its face is nonsensical and an absurd thing for a white supremacist to say, and I think can only be interpreted as a trolling attempt to further push the political polarization. Candace is a polarizing figure, and while I don't personally agree with a lot of her tactics and rhetoric, I don't think she's coming from a place of hate. Finally, to Donald Trump. Now, whether or not Donald Trump was ever mentioned in the manifesto, there was going to be a certain segment of the media which would have attempted to connect him and some of the language and rhetoric employed by the president to the attack. Unfortunately, he was mentioned, albeit only briefly, when the killer dismissed him as a leader but expressed his support for him as a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose, which is certainly enough for the media to keep the president on the defensive in terms of his relationship with white supremacy for the foreseeable future. Now let's be clear. Any attempt to attach responsibility for the attack on these three figures is playing into the stated intention of this manifesto. These murders are the sole responsibility of the individual who committed them. No one else is to blame. Even if you believe that the three individuals mentioned above had something to do with the radicalization of this person, don't say it. Don't write about how these people need to be censored, even if you think in the bottom of your heart that someone you disagree with has contributed to the radicalization of this individual. You're never going to convince anyone to change their mind by claiming that they hold blame for the deaths of 50 people that they've never met. It is the person who pulled the trigger. Although they are small in number, there are people on both sides of the political and rhetorical spectrum who would like to see our current levels of polarization degrade into violence on the street. Don't let them win. There are no winners when this rhetoric turns into violence. We are all losers. So Tim Pool, who I mentioned in my last video and I have a lot of respect for, said in a video he posted last Friday that nothing can stop the inevitable culture war and that we are headed towards a violent outbreak and civil war. I agree with Tim on some of his points. There are identitarians on both sides of the political spectrum that want us fighting with each other, but if we are united in respect and civil discourse, they will not be able to push their agenda very far. Treat people as individuals, not as representations of their racial, cultural, ethnic, class, gender, or sexual orientation category. Recognize that each and every person is worthy of dignity and respect. Love the people you disagree with. Love the people who disagree with you. Hate the ideas, but only hate the ideas. Don't dehumanize anyone. Even Donald Trump, even the person who committed these horrific acts of terrorism, is a human with the spark of divinity, with the capacity for both good and evil. He chose evil. Only individuals have the capacity for good and the capacity for evil. Categories don't, group identities don't. We all shape the world with each and every decision we make, and the outcome of the world is dependent on each and every one of our choices. Now, a final word on censorship. It is often said that sunlight is the best disinfectant. I believe the worst thing we can do is push people with disagreeable and even dangerous opinions into deeper and darker corners of the internet and society. Challenge them with ideas of respect, compassion, and love. It is vitally important that people have access to as much information as possible for which to make their own decisions, and I'm going to be touching on this a bit more in a couple of upcoming videos. I think the most appropriate thing that I can leave you with is a quote from Previn Lal, a fictional character from the video game Alpha Centauri. "Beware of he who would deny you access to information, for in his heart he dreams himself your master." Until next time, this has been The Golden Door.